So go ahead, Gramps.
Okay. I'm not aware of any particular things in school. School always seemed to me to be a piece of cake. It was fun. I just followed my nose and took me to classes and got me out at the end of the day. I'd go out and look for a buddy to play with, kick the can, or later on the way home, we'd stop off at his house or somewhere and play a game. But then once my mother discovered these two redheads she wanted to turn into skaters or dancers first, then I would be met after school, and I can remember one time in grade school, my mother pulling up just about the time that a guy was chasing me down the street and we had tumbled into a fight down a vacant lot near the school. And my mother alighted from the car and she, shrinking violet, she chased that little bugger and caught up with him and then made the two of us discuss what our problem was. And that ended any hassling that went on after school when I was being picked up to go to dancing school, which the boys delighted in.
You got a lot of flack for that?
And thinking that that's what I would be doing. And later on, when I'd get teased about it, I'd say, "You guys are really dumb. You bump into each other on a football field," and I go down and watch lovely young women in short skirts and bouncing around with their panties flashing in front of me all the time, and you think that's such a stupid thing to be doing. My mother was a very active parent. The question, one of the questions is your assessment of parenting. Mine was pretty much a uniparent operation. My mother had the vision of what she wanted to happen to these two redheads that were only 1 year apart and looked like they were twins. And so we kept getting put in situations where you were on display, and ballet, figure skating, all things that were not natural outlets for my sense of things, although they both catered to strong appreciation for music. When I was in high school, I was in the band and the orchestra, in high school, I used to usher for the 2 weeks that the opera came to Cleveland. So I put on my tuxedo, which I used for skating at that time, and put a flap over my arm, over my shoulder, and said usher, and I'd go down, and that way I could hear all of the operas and not have to pay a penny, and I just delighted in it. It was my idea of something to do. I was in the orchestra. I was a timpani, and in the band, I was. If it was the concert band, I'd play timpani. If it was the marching band, I'd play drum. I played the bass drum.
Tell them the story about the guy who...
I played the bass drum, but my career had a very interesting turn to it as a bass drummer. You'd walk along Euclid Avenue and it'd be the high school bands and the junior high band, and as they'd pass, you were trying to make sure you didn't overlap with one another. And the members of the band didn't always agree with whether there was a gap in it. And we had been marching along, and you're playing the regular drum beat and the rhythm for the march and to keep the cadence going, when suddenly the whispering started, prepare for a roll-off, and it wasn't coming from the director who was marching along in the upper corner. It was coming from the members of the band, and it comes up to the bass drum, because that then gives the signal to start your roll-off preparation. So I made it a boom, 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 and that brought the guy alive who was walking up in the corner of it, because that meant the drum major had to do the thing, and he came over and was just red-faced and furious, and we I had to take responsibility for it. I mean, if I hadn't done those 2 beats, they'd still be trying to yell and whatever. Well, we got through that, and life went on tranquilly. And then at our wedding, who should be leader of the combo, that the 4 or 5 unit band, little was a group that furnished the wedding for dancing and all the things, but my former leader, the guy who'd blown me out of the water for the roll-off, and he remembered, I remembered, and we got along famously at the wedding, but that's who showed up in my life again. So you have to be prepared for your peccadillos to reappear from time to time in life.
What else did you like about high school? What else did you like about high school?
Well, high school had one instructive moment for me. In my French class, I had I don't know, passed a note or popped a spitball or done something dumb, uncharacteristic, because I was usually just pretty much a goody-good shoes. I behaved myself and came from a strong religious background that wanted things to be done right. And I'll remember to this day the teachers addressing me and in French asking me if I knew the meaning of noblesse oblige. And I said no. And she then informed me that if you are privileged, and apparently that was Chinese for I had good scores because I always had good grades, and apparently she was going on that and whatever else was in my dossier, and she was saying, if you are privileged, if you have the ability, it's your responsibility then to behave in a way that's helpful to others and promoting the good of all. And that is, and to this day, whenever I figure I'm going off base a little bit, I think I can't remember Madame's name. I can still see her face though, and she and the band director are my recollections of high school. High school was not a social thing for me until my senior year. I went to a high school in a very definitely middle class area, East Cleveland, in my senior year, my family bought a house up in Shaker Heights where Grandma was raised, and which was the high rent district. And so in my senior year, I was put in a public high school up there, and that turned out to have more social activity of the kind that I was likely to be involved in. But again, it pretty much revolved around sports. I played on the tennis team and skated and did bowling and all that monkey business.
Going back to noblesse oblige, that has taken on a pejorative meaning since our day.
Right.
Noblesse oblige was an extra obligation. You had to do better than just average, was the general idea. And
That's exactly what it meant.
Later it became, had additional connotations of being extra privileged and extra this or that.
Sort of well-born
Right, well,
privilege in that sense. What she meant was that I had an obligation to behave myself and show proper behavior. And I tried to from that point on.
you've done all right.
Hmm?
You've done all right, Ada.
And I can barely remember the getting ready for college. I remember one of the teachers at Shaker High School where I graduated, spent 1 year and graduated, wanted me to follow engineering, go to MIT. I did not, my parents hadn't gone to college. We didn't come from a moneyed background. And so I don't remember any discussions of college until suddenly a guidance counselor at Shaker Heights yanks me by the scruff of the neck and tells me it's time now to make a decision. And this teacher was urging MIT, and my very good friend Michael McGeehan.
And a couple of others. And a couple of others.
Yes, and a couple of others. But my good friend Michael McGeehan was a figure skater, a far better skater than I, and he was going to Dartmouth. There's a whole story behind that, but and with Dartmouth's winter sports program, that appealed to me. And I was 17 years old, but I already had my draft papers, and it was 1A, and as soon as I hit 18, which would be in October 1945, the year I matriculated in college, I expected to be in the military. And at that time, there was a mopping up Europe, and it was going on in the Pacific. I never applied to more than one college. I just one set of papers and shot them off. And I think, at that time, it wasn't as though you had a surplus of males 18 years of age walking around on the streets.
It wasn't so hard to get into college, isn't it?
If you were alive and well, and maybe not even well, because maybe you didn't have a 1A, you had a 4F or something, and you were going to be able to go right through college for 4 years. But a 1A meant you were gone in the next draft call, and the war ended, of course, in August of 45, so I never got that call. But it wasn't the hassle that it has been that you people have to deal with. And again, that school, I just kept accelerating and went through and graduated earlier. No. The one lesson I bring out of Dartmouth was that I thought it was far less rigid and strict in terms of academic performance than when I got to Harvard Law School. But the one thing that's pointed out to me at Dartmouth that stuck with me to this day was a professor who said that the ease with which on one of my papers, he said glib, and he cautioned me about the because it comes easily to write, you have a tendency to be lightweight about it, use your head, think. And so that's also a pretty
Another
good thing.
noblesse oblige lesson, I think.
Once, when the girls, when Margaret and Abby here were younger, and you got interviewed by them in first grade, you talked about running after the ice truck. You talked about different inventions
Yeah.
that we take for granted that you guys didn't even have. Can you talk about some of those?
Oh, right, you had refrigerators.
We had an ice box.
You had an ice box, not a refrigerator. You didn't plug it into a wall.
They brought
You
a
had
big
an
chunk
ice
of
box,
ice.
and the ice would be put in on the top, and then the cold would drop down through the coils and keep the contents below in the ice box cool. And you'd put a sign out on it. The ice truck would come around and he'd know whether he wanted a 50-pound or a 25-pound, and he'd wear a big shoulder pad on just one side. And he'd have these tongs, big gripper tongs, and he'd get one up and put it up there and go marching up, and he'd let him in the back door, and he'd slip that into the receptacle for the ice, and he'd go off and give me a chip of ice or something like that, and I'd love it if I could follow him along. And the milkman would put our milk out on the back stoop, and in cold weather when it would be freezing, the cream would freeze and lift the cap up. And so about that much high above the bottle, you pick up a bottle and the cap would be sitting up here, and you'd take it inside and wait for it to melt, and then you could put the cap back down on it. And you wanted to get to it before animals got to it, which was, again, an early call, which was convenient if you were piling out of bed anyway, might as well bring the milk in before the cats get there. And
We had a hole in the wall, like a mailbox kind of thing, and that's where they put the milk. So it still froze and it still lifted the top up, but we didn't have to worry about animals. But just another side thing on ice. My grandfather built a cottage in Georgian Bay, and you visited up there. When he was there and when my father was there as a boy, it was a house, had a veranda all the way around. The Indians took care of cutting out big chunks of ice and putting them in the ice house with lots of sawdust and moss and things like that. And that would last all summer long. Hard to believe, but they could pile that up, and as long as you put some insulating material around it, the family had ice during the summer to take care of the scotch on the rocks and so on. And other things. Well, that's just jumping ahead another few decades. But
no, that's right. It wasn't. I'm trying to remember when. By the time I got to high school, I think we were having plug-in refrigerators.
oh, we had before then.
Hmm?
We had that before then.
Did you?
We had ice when I was very young, and I remember that they came, and I don't remember getting any slivers or anything else. But we had a refrigerator in the pantry. It was not right in the kitchen. You had to go around the corner and around the other door and so on, and you could get to the refrigerator. It didn't have a big ice container. We didn't have freezers. That was during the war when they froze foods and kind of delivered elsewhere. We didn't have frozen foods before the war. So it was just a little, a little thing like this that would make ice cubes. That was it. And then the rest was for the food, and they were small because people didn't put that much in.
What did you usually eat? Like, what were a few
Yeah.
typical meals besides the hot cereal and cinnamon toast?
Yeah, hot cereals in the morning. In our household, Sunday was a all hands dressed and polished to go to church and come back and have the big meal of the day right after church. And whether you were hungry or sated from the night before made no difference. You were going to have that noon meal on Sunday. And chances are later on, later in the 30s, when automobiles were starting to move around again, it was one of my parents' great joys to pile 3 kids in the back seat, and they'd sit in the front seat with the radio on, tuned to not classical music, but the sort of schmaltzy music of the 30s.
Big band?
Walt
Walt Disney?
Not Damrosch, Sigmund Romberg kinds of things.
Oh, light opera. Yeah, okay.
Light opera would be as heavy as things would go. And we'd go along and you were seen but not heard in the back seat. And that would shoot the very dickens out of a Sunday from my standpoint, because I couldn't get my sharkskin shoes on and go kicking a football by that time. Not just kick a can, we could really do things. We moved from East Cleveland to Cleveland. Well, we were still in East Cleveland School District, but we moved right up to the border of Cleveland Heights. And there had been all the excavations there for the expected expansion, which didn't occur because of the Depression. So you had all these carve-outs that were going to be someone's basement one day, but until that occurred, in the winter it made a nice outdoor ice rink to play hockey on, and in the summer you go down and tramp around and misbehave if you could figure out how to do it, it was a very pick-up, very casual sort of thing, but not aided by any of the devices you guys have today, and made it a much simpler life. Pretty straightforward, because you always were going to be face-to-face with someone. You never had the ambiguities and the peculiarities that come from not being able to see a person's face when they're talking with you.
Yeah, he listens with his eyes now too. When his ears don't work so well now, then
Right.
he wants to see what my mouth is doing.